All right. Clock starts when the first tweet goes up. 5 minutes, like one round of MMA. Let's see what you got, donks. What you got? What you got? Anytime. Well, I'm still good looking. All right. Can you play Face the Pain as an intro to a round of tweets? I would rather, God, what would I rather do? I would, without being grotesque, I'd rather just die. How about that? I'd literally rather just die. Next. Who would you most like to see Max Holloway fight next? I was so impressed by his striking display last night that I feel Khabib is a great style challenge. By the way, shouts to Brian Boom Kelleher, who I know has another fight they just got scheduled. So shouts to him, first of all, for the tweet. Shouts to him for watching. Best of luck to him his next fight. We'll get him here in studio before too long. But to answer the question, I would actually like to see him stay at 145 because I want to see him produce greatness at that weight class. But here's the reality. If he goes to 155, there's no wrong answer. You could go Conor if you wanted to. You could go Khabib if you wanted to. You could go Tony Ferguson if you want to. Let me introduce this idea. How about Nate Diaz? I'd like to see, if he goes to 155, I'd like to see Nate Diaz take on Max Holloway. I think that would be an interesting fight, and certainly a big fight to boost the card's profile as well as Max, and maybe even Nate as well too. Next. What does your setup look like during a busy fight weekend? How many devices do you have out? TV, laptop, and smartphone. Well, thank you for the compliments. Here's what I would say. So I invested into a little setup. I have a little YouTube studio inside my house. It used to be my bedroom. My wife and I moved it up to our second floor. We put our bedroom up there instead. We finished it and laid some carpet. And now we are upstairs. And so our old bedroom is now my YouTube studio. So I have a PC tower. I have two monitors here. So I'll have, Twitter up on one side or news or whatever, and then I'll have the screen up here. If there's multiple events like there was for Lomachenko, I'll have Lomachenko and I'll have the Shevchenko fight next to each other. I'll have that. I'll usually have my phone next to me, and I'll have a iPad as well. I have everything. I have just like Chameleonaire and Paul Wall once said, TV screens falling out the sky like rain. There you go. Next. How would you rate that card among the best pay-per-view cards of all time? Low. To me, it had everything from start to finish. Flawless. Flawless is a strong word. It was a great card. Don't misunderstand me. I enjoyed it, paid for it, loved it. I felt like I got my money's worth. I'm a happy camper. But all-time cards? No, I don't know that would rate. That's an all-time main event virtuoso performance, but that's about it. Next. What do you think the 12-29-18 promo that showed the U.S.-Canada flags on a belt meant? I think it was, shouts to Jose Youngs here on the staff. He surmised that you've got Daniel Cormier as the American champ, and Brock Lesnar was Canadian, not was Canadian, but certainly represented Canada in his last fight at UFC 200. So maybe something to do with that, but your guess is as good as mine. I literally have no idea. Next. Mighty Mouse became a dominant champ at 125, a new division, after mixed results at 135. Do you think possibly Valentina could do the same in the newly opened 125 women's division? Here's a real basic question. Who's going to beat her? Maybe somebody from 135 who drops down to 125 like her? But like of all possible 125 candidates, I mean, maybe if Tatiana Suarez jumps up, something like that. Maybe if Andrade goes back up, that might be something kind of interesting. But then she got pieced up by Jedrzejczyk, so I think that Valentina is going to be champion for a while. Next. How can UFC expect a thin women's 125 division to survive when seemingly a more developed men's 125 division could not? Perhaps they don't. But the difference is that 125 in women's side is sandwiched between two really important divisions. And so it at least serves as some kind of intermediary between them. It gives them another belt to hang on. Whereas 125 is at the end of the men's divisions. And so, therefore, they probably feel like they need it for, if no other reason, than to give a home in between two weight classes rather than just having the tail end of something that they're not sure provides a ton of functional value. Next. Now that Valentina and Joanna have finally fought for the fourth time and Nunes Cyborg are on the horizon, do you think we have exhausted women's MMA super fights for the time being? Val versus Nunes 3 is a hard sell, and no way Val fights training partner Rose. Probably. But I'll just say this, if Nunes wins, they're going to have some kind of a rematch, right? She becomes the female GOAT at that point, in my argument, in my belief. She would be the first woman 2-division champ, and she'd be a 2-division champ at the same time. So keep that in mind. Very quickly, next. Corners aren't throwing in towels. Fighters are doing just enough to keep the referees from intervening. Is it time to start asking if 5-round fights are unethical in light of what happened to Brian Ortega? Again, Chael Sonnen was the first one to raise this issue. Unethical to me seems like a bit of a strong word. I don't know that I would use that exactly, but what I would say is certainly this idea of just letting people fight on until a doctor has had enough. That's one way to do it, but I just feel like, they're intelligently defending themselves. Maybe we need to refine what that means exactly. Maybe that's actually not enough because he didn't need what was literally a historic beating in that 4th round. It didn't do him any favors, and the fight was kind of already in hand, to be perfectly honest. There he is. He is the arequipe to my pan. He is the arroz to my frijole. He is the queso colombiano to my hot chocolate. Is that what it is?
Means a lot. Thank you. Yeah.
Is it queso blanco or is it queso colombiano?
It's both, but you just refer to it as queso blanco.
Okay, there he is.
Yeah.
All right. We don't have a moment to waste. We got a bunch of calls to get to. Sir, you take it away, please. I'm sorry we couldn't get you to the front of the show. I'm trying to try different formats.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
See what works, see what doesn't. But all right, take it away, my friend.
All right. We're coming off a big weekend. Max Holloway picking up his second title defense against Brian Ortega, and most of the calls were centered around that, obviously. So let's get into it.
From Phoenix, Arizona. Luke, I could not believe that Max Holloway was the underdog, the betting underdog in that fight. I'm not a rich man, but if I could have possibly known that a day ahead of time, 2 days ahead of time, I would have bet my house. There was no doubt in my mind that that's what was going to happen. Brian Ortega had not proven himself to the level that Max Holloway has proven himself as far as being an MMA fighter. Thank you for your time. I'll appreciate your comments on that.
Yeah, that was a hilarious one. I mean, here's my basic attitude towards it. I said this on my own YouTube channel on the night of the fight. Everyone's going to get bitter at the UFC. And people are going to say, "Oh my God, how was Max so underrated?" I noted it was madness on Twitter. I literally used that word madness when I saw that. But at the same time, it's not, right? At the same time, it's like, look, did the UFC build up these contenders perhaps to a degree where they were not as competitive as advertised? I mean, maybe, right? I mean, I guess they weren't. But I'm really not mad at the UFC for that. People should do their own due diligence, number one. And number two, if you didn't build them up and they somehow win because MMA is crazy, then you've got a scenario where your challenger didn't get promoted properly. I get that they've had a lot of these guys recently that they've promoted who didn't necessarily work out in the big moment, like an Ngannou or an Ortega or a Daryl. What am I saying? The big ass welterweight, the gorilla, Till. That when they were trying to turn a corner, didn't reach that moment. Big deal. Yeah. All those guys, well, less so in Ngannou, but the case of Till and Ortega, dude, they're young, and they are very good fighters. Maybe not to be the best in their division, but they're really, really good. I don't really blame the UFC for building up and promoting a young contender.
I mean, you ideally, that's what you want, right? You want fights that are intriguing, fights that you don't know what's going to happen, right? You don't want a wash going into, thinking it's going to be a wash going into a fight. I think that was fine, but I don't know. I'm curious, do you think maybe the reason why he was a big underdog was because of his health issues?
Of course.
I mean,
of course.
Is that only it?
That was a big one. And, dude, Ortega, even if the numbers didn't favor Ortega, the numbers have never, the striking differential.
It's never mattered.
They never mattered because he just overcame them in the end. Now, in this one, it did matter. Okay, Max is different. But look, you had a really interesting, exciting contender. Yeah. You had a champion with a ton of questions. I did not think it was fair that he was the underdog, but I get why the line narrowed, and I'm really not that upset about it. And hey, if you're a Max believer, he even said it himself. You made cash on Saturday night, so good for you.
Yeah, it was just super bizarre. But anyways, let's keep going on. Now let's talk about Max Holloway performance and where that ranks.
Okay.
What's up, Luke and Danny? This is John from the University of Memphis, and I would like to know how you would rank Cormier's performance at 226, Khabib's performance at 229, and Holloway's performance at 231. My opinion is that Holloway outshined everybody. Good show. Thanks for keeping up the good work.
So let's forget about exactly all those. Just 2018 has so far. Obviously, there's still time left, but
Yeah.
has Max Holloway had the best championship performance in 2018?
Boy, that is a phenomenal
And I would
question.
like to throw to that list Tyron Woodley's win over Darren Till. It was very
Yeah,
impressive.
Jesus.
Caller didn't mention.
All right, well, partly the strength of the performance is going to be a function of the strength of the contender. In that case, it would make Cormier's the best, but his wasn't as comprehensive, so that would make it a little bit limited.
Cormier's win over Stipe.
Over Stipe,
Yeah.
yeah, because that was the strongest contender for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean,
But
he was fighting the
he was
champion.
fighting the champion, and he starched him in a round. So
Yeah.
so there's that. But if you're talking about like virtuoso overall performance, golly, because Khabib's was good too. Man, you're splitting hairs here. Because Khabib's metagame was great, like the overall strategy. I mean, forget the tactics. The strategy he employed was super smart. It's recency bias. I'm going to say Max, but I honestly don't think there's a clear answer to this question, at least not at the top of my head. But you saw what I pointed out. Like Max doesn't do anything super flashy.
Yeah.
But every piece of fundamentals that he has, and then these abilities to just switch in between different types of games, is basically unparalleled. And for that reason, him and Khabib probably had the most interestingly and comprehensive performances.
Yeah. And to your point, I agree with your take. One of the reasons why I think Khabib's
Wow.
and Max Holloway's were probably the most impressive out of this year, it's also because they try to go and take the route of fighting, their opponent at their own game. Like Khabib, although he used a lot of wrestling, he still stood and striked with Conor McGregor, even knocked him down. And I don't know if you noticed, Max Holloway was trying to submit Brian Ortega at various points. Like he was down to go to the ground and fish for guillotines, and that's pretty impressive. When you're like, okay, I'll step in your game and let's go.
He abandoned it pretty quickly, but yes, to your point,
Yeah.
he did try. You're right. I thought for a second, I was like, if he submits Brian Ortega, holy crap!
Yeah.
You know?
Didn't Brian Ortega almost kind of lock them up on a leg lock position, right?
And then had the back. Remember, he kind of slipped
That's
off the
true.
side.
Yeah. All right, now let's talk about the other side of the equation, Mr. Ortega.
Okay.
Hey, what's going on, Luke and Danny? My name is Seth, calling here from New Mexico. And I was just wondering if you expected Brian Ortega to do better than he actually did, and if you think his stand-up is at a world-class level, or if Max is just too damn good with distance, timing, and pressure for anyone else in the 145 division right now. And also, what changes do you think Brian needs to make in order to become a champion one day? Thanks, Luke. Love the show.
Wow, what a good questions today.
I'm telling you, man, and the amount that we got was a lot, too.
Okay, all right.
Getting
So
good.
let's answer this as best we can. Number one, is it a world-class level? No, I mean, I think he probably has to work on it. He's got some striking. He gets hit too much is basically the problem. And I'm not the guy to fix it, but I can certainly at least diagnose that there is an issue with him getting hit. The numbers speak to that. Remember also, he's really young, and he came from jiu-jitsu. And by the way, I would really encourage you, I mean, being a Fight Pass customer has its values, because you can go back and look. Dude, go look at his early fights. He was barely throwing. In his last fight, he was just chucking, not this one, but the one before.
Yeah.
He was throwing a lot more. I made this point before. Striking offense comes before striking defense, typically on a learning curve. It takes time to get that defense at the end of it. So I'm telling you, do not count out Brian Ortega. But he does have some issues to iron out. It is also true that Max Holloway, dude, he may have fought the best striker in the UFC. We need to have this conversation. Where does Max rank among the best strikers in MMA? If he's not the top, okay, fine, he's not the top. But boy, he is right up there. Yep. There's very few to nobody who can strike in the way that he does. It is phenomenal. And I also made a point before. Go back and watch the Jose Aldo fights. The numbers speak to it. Danny, I'm telling you, Max, he was throwing, but he was very judicious with it. He was wide open in this one.
Yeah.
And I can't tell if that's because he thought he could or he was just going to make a point about it. Hard to say, but that's my response. Yours?
And he had a little more swagger in there, Max Holloway.
Yeah, he did.
There's a lot of things like the taunting he doesn't usually do. I mean, he did the whole thing with Ricardo Lamas where he was pointing down and things like that, but still he wasn't dropping his hands and all that. As far as Ortega, I'd like to see him, obviously improve his striking, but you can already see he has what it takes to become a great striker. The type of elbows he was throwing and stuff like that, you can tell those are some things that you don't necessarily train with in a training camp, but just things that come up. So naturally, he has that instinct of where to throw shots. But yeah, it's all about the striking defense, and I would like to see him add some more takedowns to his arsenal because we already know he's already he's already a very dangerous grappler.
Yep.
And in order to be able to use that, I know Max Holloway's a tough customer given he has an amazing takedown defense. But, if you had a few takedowns or, arm drags or just find ways to take the fight to your element, I think that'll greatly improve his game.
Yeah.
Because he was just basically forced to strike with Holloway. That's what happened.
It's a rough place to be, man.
All right, well, we got tons of questions about this, so I picked the one.
Okay. I'm gonna guess.
shortest.
I'm gonna guess it rhymes with Schmonner Schmickschmegger.
Yes.
All right.
Pretty close.
Hey, Luke and Danny, with a mouth breather special from my mom's basement. This is Sean from Chicago. Dana's post-fight presser, he said he wants to see Max go to 155. If this change does happen, who would you like to see as his first opponent? I think he's deserving of an immediate title shot, but I think we all want to see Tony versus Khabib first. And with the idea of Max moving up, I'm dying to see Max versus Conor in a rematch as a non-title pay-per-view headliner. Thanks. Love the show.
I mean,
First of all, I feel when I was screening that, I felt like I was, going through a tutorial of how to do something on Premiere or something. Hello, guys.
Yeah.
The voice.
Hi, this is Steve here. Today we're going to look at Adobe.
Yes.
Blah blah blah.
Exactly.
Right. Man. Here's the interesting part about this question. There's really no wrong answer to it.
There isn't.
I made my plea about if you wanted to have a guy do something with a legacy, like a GSP did at welterweight, keep Max at 145. The big question there is going to be, what about the weight cut? All right, man, did it look like that weight cut was killing him in that fight? Now, I'm not saying it's not bad for him. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it wouldn't be better for his health to go to 155. It's also not what I'm saying. But it's not impacting his performances. Not even a little bit. At least not in this one. Now, maybe that larger issue about his health. I don't know. But certainly on Saturday night, it made no difference to him at all as in a bad thing. The McGregor fight, dude, who wouldn't want to see it? I'd actually bet on, I know this is going to enrage the world when I say this, I think he beats McGregor the second time around.
Okay.
He won't get taken down. He can do, I think we know McGregor gasses unless he can fix that issue. The kind of pressure that Max will put on you, the kind of his ability to not take damage and hand it out, I think it would be a real big problem for McGregor, but I'm sure folks will disagree. That's fine.
Yeah.
The Khabib one, look, who doesn't want to see any of these? What about my idea, Danny? How do you feel about, first of all, how do you feel about Max versus McGregor? And also, what about Max versus Nate Diaz?
All right, so let's start off with McGregor. I feel like that fight has to happen just because McGregor has a win over him, and we've seen what Max Holloway has become since, So it's not like we're just running back the same old fight. You know what I'm saying? So that fight has to happen. It's a huge fight. And I agree with you. I would say Holloway would be the favorite going into it, at least on my book. Still a really competitive fight and, a very intriguing one. And I feel like it would be a lot like the Diaz fight. And, to switch over to Nate Diaz, didn't Max Holloway in some sort of way give you like a Diaz vibe in the sense of...
Bro, those Hawaiians, it's like the mini Stockton.
Yeah, and
Hawaii,
outside of his attitude, just the way he fights, like he'll just chop you down. It's just like a decline. You start here with Max Holloway, right? And it's just downhill. And you see the end coming. Like, you're landing one punch, then all of a sudden you're not landing as often. All of a sudden you're getting, completely washed. So I would like to see the Diaz fight in that sense because I feel like those two would just bang it out. And, Diaz has a chin, Holloway has a chin. They both like to scrap. Max Holloway apparently likes to taunt now. Diaz does too. So I know there's going to be some nice photos there.
And also, just think about this, Danny, if I may, real quickly. How many times do we see rematches back to back? Somebody loses, rematch. Somebody loses, rematch. Here's a rematch years in the making.
I think those are the best
Those
rematches.
are exactly right. That is exactly right. They're much better when there's a little bit of space. Now, 5 is a long time, 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
Usually 2 or 3 years is the best. But that's my point. This is a real test of who really advanced,
Yeah. In fact, immediate rematches are usually kind of crappy, to be honest.
I agree.
In the sense of, it doesn't really make sense. Only if it's controversial.
Like
but
a Triple G Canelo.
Right.
Great question, though.
Yeah.
So many good options, right?
I know.
So many good options.
That's the beauty about Max Holloway moving up to 155. He's already cleared up the division on his way to the title. He beat the GOAT there twice. It's also hard to tell him to move up because he did make weight. Not only that, but he looked damn good in that performance. So it's kind of hard to tell him, like, hey, you need to go up. No, you don't. He's killing it. But, health-wise, we know for the long run is probably better.
All right,
now let's talk about the co-main and, Joanna Jedrzejczyk's next move.
Hey, guys, what's going on? This is Alex from Lynbrook, Long Island. My question is, what's next for Joanna Jedrzejczyk? Obviously she lost her title. couldn't regain it at the rematch, and now she lost the flyweight title against Shevchenko. And, clearly that's not going to be something that's going to get rematched anytime soon, if ever. So I'm just curious, what do you guys think is next for her? And also...
All right, I'm going to pause it right there because then he goes on to talk about gossip, and we're going to do that here.
All right. I don't mind a little gossip, but okay.
I mean, yeah.
What is next for Joanna? Tough spot.
Very tough
spot. She could, if it sounds like she might go back to straw weight if the title opportunity opens itself. And remember, she beat Tisha Torres at UFC Calgary, so she's still obviously
Legit
very
contender.
competitive there. I think a third. I am not opposed to a third fight with Rose, given how competitive the second one was.
Yeah.
But you got to get some wins in between. I
Yeah.
think that's really the issue. And Shevchenko, I'm not interested in another. They fought 4 times already in 2 different sports, and one person was clearly better in both.
Yeah.
I don't need to see that one another again. But a third fight against Rose, or if Andrade wins and somehow becomes the champion, that works for me.
Yeah. So we first have to see. I think Andrade is probably going to get the shot next. So we'll have to see how that plays out because Andrade is a legit threat to Rose, stylistically, in my opinion. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I would like to see her stay active, and I don't think she's going to get an immediate title shot, in her next fight. So go down to 115 if she can, if she wants, get another win, and then fight whoever the champion is. She has a big name, so
Fans love her.
Yeah, you can still put her up in a pay-per-view co-main or even main, and have her challenge for the title again.
Okay.
And the Valentina fight, sure, I don't want to see it anytime soon, but she did mention how she's kind of mostly done with 115 and she wants to go up to 125 because she's older. It's a much healthier weight class.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe she puts on weight, gets a few wins, makes that fight interesting again.
Maybe. We'll see. For now, I don't need to see it.
Yeah. All right. Do you have time?
Yes.
All right. Do you want to talk about 5-round fights or light heavyweight division?
Light heavyweight.
Right.
Hey, Luke and Danny. This is Floyd from Salt Lake City. And
Sounds like me.
my question is a simple one. Is light heavyweight kind of good now with some of these new guys, Johnny Walker, Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith, and now Alexander Rakic? Thanks.
So we all hate on the light heavyweight division.
Fun to do that.
Rightfully so. But, man, this caller's correct. Light heavyweight is getting kind of good.
They go through cycles, right? I said this before. Alexander Rakic fought in Rotterdam and he fought in Germany, and I don't think a lot of folks saw those fights because they just sort of took place on a card that was not a big priority for the UFC. Well, this one was, and it's a fight pass portion, but okay, it's a big card. That dude is awesome. Shouts to Alexander Rakic. I think he's at American Top Team. I think he is natively Austrian, or maybe whatever his full background is, but I think he's from Vienna, Austria. That dude is huge for that weight class. Big, naturally gifted, powerful. Obviously, his game is still coming together. You wouldn't even know the full potential of him. But I've been very impressed watching him. That's a guy who stands out on tape. Yeah. You already know about Dominic Reyes. Yeah, he's obviously phenomenal.
Yeah.
Gustafsson sort of back in the fold. We'll see what happens there. Anthony Smith got his black belt over the weekend. So shouts to Anthony Smith. Good again. I don't know. I think you need a few more names. But definitely look, these divisions, they go through highs and lows. And the stock's been low for a while. It's been like Bitcoin. But I think it's a butt coin. But I think it's about to start going back up a little bit.
Yeah. Dude, and Thiago Santos had an amazing performance. And this should be an example for all the middleweights struggling to make weight or just go up a weight class. 205, you can get favorable matchups there because at 185, man, it's just a bunch of killers. And, imagine if like a Yoel Romero goes up or a Luke Rockhold. All of a sudden that division starts, holding some weight.
Yes, I completely agree.
For sure.
Let's fire through a couple more.
Cool. Let's do the 5-round one.
Luke, Danny, Alan, Colorado transplant from Rio, Brazil again.
Rio
quick
de
question
Janeiro.
about 5 rounds, 5 minutes fights. I used to be over the fence about it after last Saturday. I really don't like to watch those fights anymore. It can take away years of their careers, maybe out of their lives. I think definitely we should move into 3 rounds, 5 minutes across the board. What is your opinion, guys, about 5-5s for main events and title shots? Grande abraço, amigos. Thanks for the show.
Abraço. Muito obrigado.
That's awesome. Okay. How would I say this?
5-round fights are awesome.
So here's the deal. I brought this up on the MMA Beat because Chael Sonnen was in studio on my radio show and brought up to me. The first time you hear the argument, hey, 5-round fights are really bad for you, you say to yourself, it's just, I mean, yeah, they're rough, but it's not that big a deal. And then the more you begin to think about it, you're like, oh my God, there is clearly a drop off after 3 rounds where defense just goes down and there's so much horrible damage happens in those 4th and 5th rounds. I like the solution that we came to on the MMA Beat, which is you can't really get rid of them. You can probably limit them, but you got to pay these guys. Dude, Brian Ortega probably should have gotten, $5 million for that fight? Comfortably $5 million for that fight. I mean, dude, did you look at the numbers I showed you? 134 strikes he took. That's more than Max has landed in any other fight combined except for the last Aldo fight. Yeah. That is an insane amount of damage. If his paycheck is not $5 million at some point, dude, he got robbed. He deserved so much more money for that. And I think there's something to be said, man. These Bellator, people are like, Bellator, why don't they have all their main events 5 rounds? Good for Bellator for not doing that. Save these guys some health. The fans don't need to have everything that they want.
For sure. Yeah, you got to pay them more, but dude, I'm all in for 5 rounds. I think legendary moments, legendary fighters are made out of 5 rounds. I mean, Anderson Silva submitting Chael Sonnen, John Jones coming back, with his fight with Alexander Gustafsson. If that were 3 rounds, he probably would have lost that, right?
Yeah. And Silva would have lost.
Yeah. Max Holloway, we were just talking about how ridiculous he looked. He needed that 4th round to show everyone, like, yo, this guy's like one of the best strikers out there, period.
That's one of the best rounds of domination in UFC history.
Yeah.
That's not a 10-8, or maybe it was a 10-8, depending on your perspective.
That was probably a 10-7.
But the point being is this, dude, you got to pay those guys, man.
Yeah.
If you're making, 50 and 50 for one of those, bro,
yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah. And also, we got to, hold the corners responsible as well, man. If you're seeing, for example, the Raquel Pennington situation, I mean, sure, the fight is 5 rounds, but the corner decides if it's 5 rounds. You know what I'm saying? It could be 4, it could be 3.
And dude, that's why I said at the beginning of the show, and I said it out of respect, if you corner Brian Ortega, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Because that dude's ability to take punishment is beyond compare.
For sure. You saw what he posted on Instagram? He said, I'm willing to die. I was willing to die that night.
Do you believe him? Because I do.
I do.
I 100% believe if you'd asked him to die that night, he'd have said yes.
I mean, the fact that he took all those hits and he was still swinging, he was still coming at him. Like, a lot of people would have maybe just shot a terrible takedown, let people take their back, and then just tap immediately as soon as the hands go around the neck.
There and just did what he could,
there.
man.
Yeah.
I mean, what a dog he is. It's ridiculous. So you got to protect that guy, man.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can fire 1 or 2 more.
All right. Let's talk about Max.
What's going on, Luke and Danny? This is Dylan from New Jersey, and I'm calling you directly after the Holloway and Ortega fight. And I just want to ask you about Holloway's ceiling. Like, we watch him right now. He's honestly spectacular. And I want to know what's next for him. Like, is it the Conor rematch? Is he retaining his crown at 145? Is he fighting Moicano? And then next man up, maybe Chad Mendez, because has been around for a while? Or do you think he's going to go up? Do you think he had trouble making the weight? Is he going to go fight Khabib, or is he going to go fight Poirier? What's it going to be? I really want to know what Holloway's ceiling is and what you thought of his title defense against Ortega when the odds actually had him as the underdog when it came down to the fight.
Right,
thanks for taking my question.
So what's his ceiling? I know there was a few other questions thrown in there in the same question, but I mean, Max Holloway, 27 years old.
Yep. And not taking a ton of
cleared
damage.
The entire division.
Taking a little bit of damage, but not a ton of damage. If he can stay healthy, which obviously is, I think he thinks that the injury stuff and the illness stuff is behind him. I certainly hope. I guess only time will tell. If that's behind him, bro, I'm telling you, listen to what I'm saying. I am not saying he is an all-time great. That is not what I am saying. Not yet. However, if I'm looking at the division and the landscape and what he can do, does he have the possibility of becoming one? I don't think that's crazy to say. I don't.
Not at all.
A ton of work he has to put in to get there, but he is special, dude. Max Holloway is a special fighter.
Yeah. I think with this fight and also his Aldo fights, he put himself in a stage where he's letting everybody know, I'm world class, I'm legit, I'm one of the greatest. Now, from here on, that's where the work comes in to really define his greatness and who he is and how he will be remembered. But yeah, his ceiling, man. I mean, and not only in cage, but take outside of the cage. Like it feels to me that he's always known he's good, But with the taunting, with the things he's been saying, like he really now, like he feels it. Like he's like, okay, I'm really like levels above these guys.
Who can strike in the way that I showed, like him? I can't think of another striker that can do that.
The way he uses the distance and his accuracy, very Conor McGregor-esque. The only thing is that Conor McGregor's more like a one-shot type guy.
And he doesn't switch stance nearly
Yeah, he'll
as
put some
effectively.
combinations, but Max Holloway's like, he puts on.
And he's never out of position. It's absurd. The last thing I think I'll say about Max in this case is, well, I forget what I was going to say, so there you go. But I guess I'm just pointing out, I don't know. I forgot. Let's do one more because I have things to attend to.
Cool.
Hey guys, it's Josh from Windsor, Ontario. I was at the fights this weekend, and my question is about the Cowboy fight. It was very obvious that he couldn't defend his grappling game because he was trying to avoid getting blood in his eye. And I was just wondering if the UFC or MMA should put something in place where they try to protect fighters against getting other fighters' bloods into their eye, into their mouth, their ears, and all other orifices by pausing, cleaning up the fighters, getting them back in the position. I mean, we've seen it when it gets really bad, but in this case, Cowboy was completely defenseless. He was just basically trying to get his eyes out of there, and ultimately paid the price for it and losing that fight. But up until then, I feel like it was his to win. So what do you guys think that they should be doing, if anything?
Okay, all right. I'm short on time. It's fine. Here's the answer to that. Too bad, so sad. I mean, that sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I don't mean it in that way. What I mean to say is, in wrestling, for example, you know this. If two guys clash heads and you get your head cut open, they have what's called blood time, where they go and they'll even wrap your head up so you can do that. I'm not
like a mummy.
Like a mummy. So they'll do that. You don't want to really do that in MMA because blood is part of the story. If someone kicks you in the leg and tears one of your ligaments, you have to kind of hop along on it and just let it be what it is. Now, at some point, there becomes too much of it to let it continue. The way he was bleeding, I'd never seen someone bleed like that from the forehead. Yeah. It looked like someone had taken a balloon and just sliced it open and all the water had just fallen out. It was absurd, but he ate that shot and the blood got in his face and he rolled. This idea, he was mounted, taking punishment. He took the hand of the wrist of Oliveira and then rolled his elbow on top of it, and that's how it landed. Dude, he was completely in control, and then he showed him his back, and he got finished. Yes, the blood in the eyes was a hindrance, but that was I won't say that was headed one way, but Gunnar was in control of that, and that was a nice win by him.
Yeah, I mean, he had him mounted. He was threatening. He was landing shots. But the blood did it. I mean, the shot was hard, but I feel like there was just so much blood on his face. I feel like Cowboy freaked out for a second just of the amount of blood that was coming out. And that's when he rolled over and he knew something was off just because like it was pouring out and he just tapped immediately. But it is an interesting question because also Gunnar Nelson was bleeding from his nose quite significantly. And when he was on top, I saw in a few instances like there was blood dripping on him and he was just like moving around. He was actually affecting, like, moving around his position and based on the blood and the amount of blood that was falling.
You've rolled with guys when they're on top and then their sweat falls in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Or in the eyes.
It's awful.